Our next speaker is Mr. Tashie Zaheer. He's the president of Urdu Academy of North America.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। यहाँ कुछ जान से आवाज़ आनी चाहिए। There you go. Thank you. Please forgive me. Not as efficient as I once used to be. First of all, I'd like to thank Ghazali Sahab for allowing me this opportunity and the privilege to talk about his latest book, Muslim World in the New Global Order. You may have to bear with me a little longer because I'm going to take you through the book. But before I do that, I must offer my most sincere admiration of Ghazali Sahab as a contributing member of our Muslim community and the community in general in more ways than one. Over the past few years, he has authored a total of 7. Am I right? Or? Yeah, 7. His last book, Islam and Muslims in the Post-9/11 America, that was inaugurated on March 10th, 2013. Before the event, our mutual friend Ustur Raza Sahab wrote to Ghazali Sahab, and I quote, "My congratulations on publishing this much-needed book. I am writing to convey my thanks for your dedication to your chosen profession. In the days of Fox and CNN journalistic types, you are a source of truth and a beacon of hope," end quote. Unfortunately, not much has changed since. Dear friends, I'm sure most of us do realize what kind of commitment, dedication, and perseverance it takes to write not 1 or 2 or 3, but 7 books in the last few years. I would like to request all of you friends to put your hands together for this amazing individual and a distinguished member of our community in our lives. Now let's talk about his latest book, Muslim World in the New Global World Order. I'll take you through the book, so please bear with me. The curse of oil in the Middle East, the Arab betrayal of the Palestinians, in his next topic in this book, in chapters 10 to 15, focuses on the world, Muslims, and where do Muslims stand in the new global world order, and what is the projection of the Muslim world in 2030, 2050. The book is filled with amazing research, discussions, analyses, and projections. I would like to focus on the last 8 chapters and mostly on the title of the book, which is Muslim World in the New Global Order. Sadly, the entire history of us Muslims is filled with conflicts, wars, and killings simply to gain control of power. That, unfortunately, continues even today. Ghazali Sahab also talks about the failure of OIC, which stands for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. This organization happens to be the second largest intergovernmental organization in the world after the United Nations. It was founded in September 1969. Today, the OIC comprises of 57 member states with a population of nearly 2 billion people combined. The OIC members represent 22% of the world population, having 2% of the world's GDP, 1.3% of the world trade, and only 1.5% of the investments. 25% of the OIC population does not have access to medical facilities or safe drinking water. Please keep that in mind. Half the population lives below the poverty line, classified as the most poor. Ghazali Sahab tells us that this depressing picture of Islamic countries is not limited to the economic and social spheres. In the realm of education and technology, the facts are equally disappointing. The OIC members possess 70% of the world energy resources and 40% of the available raw material, but their GDP is only 5% of the world GDP. Muslim countries miserably lag behind in education and technology. They produce only 500 PhDs each year, all Muslim countries, as compared to 3,000 in India and 5,000 in UK. None of their educational or research institutions or centers of excellence find place in the top 100 in the world. Among the main failure of the OIC includes lack of cohesion and unity, as there are interstate differences among the member states. There are Shia-Sunni conflicts, as always, antagonistic foreign policy with major Western world influence, and territorial disputes, to name a few. Ghazali Sahab points out that since the establishment of OIC, Muslim countries have suffered 6 major disasters. The breakup of Pakistan through armed intervention of India in 1971, the invasion of Lebanon by Israel in 1982, the Iran-Iraq war, Soviet intervention in Afghanistan, and US occupation of Iraq have dealt a moral blow to the unity, dignity, and sovereignty of the Muslim world. The OIC has failed to respond meaningfully to any of these crises or demonstrate any unity of thought or action apart from using high-sounding declarations at the end of each summit. Nothing was done to contain the crises or avert tragedies. OIC remained only a silent spectator. Islam really is the only unifying force among the OIC members. Otherwise, they have serious differences amongst themselves. In the next chapter, Islam perceived as the enemy of the Western civilization, he points out that the term civilization is usually used in singular to mean modern Western civilization, as we all know. There is a tendency in the West to consider its own tradition alone as rational and scientific and denigrate other traditions as mere propaganda, religious obscurantism, willful misdirection, superstition, etc., etc. According to this scheme, the West is progressive, rational, enlightened, and secular. Islam is backward, fanatical, irrational, and fundamentalist. What is interesting that it is not Islam and Christianity that are contrasted in the Western world, or the West and the West or the East, but Islam and the West. One being a religion, the other being a geographical area. It seems clearly very important for the West to feel superior and to see Judeo-Christian Western culture as the best and most progressive. The world concentrates on Islam as a religion which is made out to be responsible for countless political, cultural, and social phenomena in Islamic countries. Muslim nations are heavily dependent either on the US, European Union, China, or Russia. Even those economically affluent such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE are relying mostly on foreign firms and assistance to explore their oil and mineral wealth. 9 of the African countries with Islam as the religion of majority, including Mauritania, Somalia, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Sudan, Libya, Niger, and Egypt, are seriously struggling with their economies that could collapse if foreign support were not forthcoming. According to the population projection by the Pew Forum on Religious and Public Life, the world's Muslim population will grow by roughly 35% by 2030, resulting in a global Muslim population of 2.2 billion. We are told that by 2050, Muslims could account for roughly 11.2% of the total European population. Between mid-2010 and mid-2016, Europe received around 2.5 million Muslims. A new study by RFBF, Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, says that the world will see dramatic shift in economic and religious affairs. So there's the good news. Globally, economic growth among the Muslim population is expected to significantly outpace global economic growth, in the large part because the number of Muslims in the world is expected to lead the world in population growth compared with other religious groups. According to Standard Chartered Bank's 2019 study, 3 Muslim countries, Indonesia, Turkey, and Egypt, will be among the largest economies in 2030. A report by PricewaterhouseCoopers predicts that by 2050, the Indonesian economy will have grown to almost 20% of the size of US economy. Indonesia is expected to be included in the group called E7. I don't know how many of us know that. That's a new term. Indonesia is expected to be included in a group called E7, much like G7, which is comprised of China, India, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, and Turkey. By 2050, the report says that the E7 economies will have outstripped the current G7, which includes US, Japan, Germany, UK, France, Italy, and Canada. The HSBC, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, most of us don't know that. We just know that HSBC. Experts expect the emerging world to overtake developed economies. HSBC research finds that 19 of the top 30 world economies are emerging markets today. In his epilogue, Ghazali Saab shares with his readers that the geopolitical debate in the years after the 9/11 attacks focused on terrorism and the US invasion of Afghanistan instead of the rise of BRICS. For those of us who may not know, BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and lately South Africa. The term was initially created as BRIC, B-R-I-C, without the S, for South Africa by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill in 2001. He believed that by 2050, the 4 BRIC economies would come to dominate the global economy. They're getting there. Despite the initial disbelief of BRIC, effectiveness and cohesion among Western commentators, the Financial Times finally admitted in 2014 that shifts, and I quote, "The shifts in the global economic power suggest that changes in institutional power may be logical or even inevitable. Today we know for a fact that the dominant position of the Western powers is eroding. In contrast, powers like China and India have come to the fore for making the global decision-making elite less Western and ideologically more diverse." Ghazali Saab concludes that the US-centered international order established after the World War II is collapsing. The global political and economic order is undergoing rapid change. The old order imposed by the victors of the Second World War is withering away because of its inbuilt inequalities. Unfortunately, the Muslim world is not yet an independent and cohesive force within the emerging multi-power global force. It is important to note that as US losing its lead role, according to the IMF, trade statistics over the last 20 years, China has overtaken the US in becoming the lead partner with the entire Muslim world. The centerpiece of the China's relationship with the Muslim world today is the BRI, which stands for Belt and Road Initiative. Interestingly, the initiative was launched in 2 phases by the Chinese president in Muslim countries. Muslim countries which have either endorsed the BRI or committed in some form to partnering with it includes Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. According to the head of the Asia Policy Program at the Abba Iban Institute of the International Diplomacy, as a global superpower, China's engagement in the Middle East has become increasingly important for the region and beyond. The New World Order cannot be considered complete without the mention of Russia. As the US backs out of the Middle East, Russia is leaning forward to expand its footprints in the region. President Putin actively marks Russian arms and defense articles as a cheaper, more accessible options than those of the competitors. Russian weapons do not come with the layers of security stipulations, human rights protection, and end-use monitoring that accompany US arms. Partners like Turkey, which have opted to purchase advanced air defense systems from Russia and Saudi Arabia, demonstrate that countries will seek other suppliers for their defense needs when the US is reluctant to do so. Even Germany has shown willingness to partner with a primary competitor, incorporating Russian navigation system on ships in its navy. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end, I fully agree with Ghazali Sahab when he says, it is difficult to foresee the future trajectory of the Muslim world, especially in various fields. However, the shift from the west to east has already started. My personal request, we as Muslims must realize our individual and collective responsibilities as a society and must make every effort to fulfill those responsibilities. We like to blame others and hold others responsible for our inabilities and limitations. The change starts with individuals. I pledge to do my part. Will you do yours?
Very good.
Please, one last request. Everyone has talked about that. Buy the book right here and take the time to read it. A lot of work has gone into this book. It would be good for us to benefit from Ghazali Sahab's hard work, and we must thank him while we do that. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much.